The atmosphere inside the arena was heavy, suffocating under the weight of inevitability. For over 400 days, the Women's World Championship had been held hostage by a force of nature that simply could not be stopped. Rhea Ripley stood in the center of the ring, the black leather of her gear glistening under the harsh stadium lights, the gold belt draped carelessly over her shoulder as if it were a toy she had grown bored of. The crowd was a mixture of booing hostility and begrudging respect. They hated her arrogance, but they could not deny her dominance. She had beaten everyone. Every legend, every up-and-comer, every challenger who dared to step between the ropes had been decimated by the Riptide. The division wasn't just beaten, it was broken. Commentary was selling the narrative perfectly. Michael Cole's voice was somber, almost resigned, as he listed the names of the victims that lay in Ripley's wake. There was a genuine feeling in the air that perhaps there was no one left. The era of mommy wasn't just a catchphrase, it was a prison sentence for the rest of the roster. Ripley raised the microphone to her lips, her dark makeup smudged perfectly to enhance her menacing glare. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. She spoke with the quiet, terrifying confidence of a predator that has run out of prey. She told the thousands in attendance and the millions watching at home that she was the greatest of all time. She declared that the women's revolution was dead and that she had built an empire on its ashes. The heat from the crowd was nuclear. They wanted to see her fall, but hope was a dangerous thing to hold on to in this era of dominance. She issued an open challenge, not out of bravery, but out of boredom. She wanted a fight, but she expected a victim. The referee stood by, looking anxious, waiting for anyone to walk through the curtain. The camera panned to the entrance stage, zooming in on the empty ramp. The silence that followed was deafening. 10 seconds. 20 seconds. The crowd's anticipation began to sour into disappointment. It seemed that the locker room had finally surrendered. Just as Ripley began to laugh a cold, mocking cackle that echoed through the arena speakers, the unexpected happened. It wasn't music. It wasn't a pyrotechnic explosion. It was a sound that hadn't been heard in this arena for years. The massive Titantron behind her, usually displaying her Judgment Day graphics, suddenly flickered. It went black. The arena plunged into total darkness. The laughter in the ring stopped abruptly. For a moment, the only light came from the thousands of cell phone flashlights igniting in the stands, creating a sea of stars in the black void. Confusion rippled through the audience. Was this a technical malfunction? Was this a power outage? The commentators were confused, their headsets cutting in and out of the feed. The tension shifted from boredom to a distinct, vibrating anxiety. Something was wrong, or perhaps something was about to be very, very right. Then, the sound of static cut through the silence. It was a sharp, digital distortion that made the audience cover their ears. On the giant screen, a singular image flashed for a split second, a pair of combat boots skipping across pavement. The crowd murmured. The static hit again, louder this time, accompanied by a quick flash of a spiderweb logo. A low rumble began to build in the arena, a sound that started in the cheap seats and rolled down like an avalanche toward ringside. The hardcore fans knew. They recognized the signs before the casuals did. The rumble turned into a roar, a collective realization that history was about to be rewritten. In the ring, Ripley looked around, her eyes darting into the darkness, her grip tightening on the championship belt. She wasn't scared, but she was alert. She knew that in the WWE darkness never meant nothing. It meant the arrival of a storm. And then it hit. The opening riff of Let's Light It Up blasted through the PA system with the force of a sonic boom. The reaction was instantaneous and primal. It wasn't just a cheer. It was a release of years of pent-up waiting. The roof of the arena practically lifted off as 18,000 people jumped to their feet in unison. The sound was deafening, a wall of white noise that drowned out the commentary team entirely. Michael Cole could be seen screaming into his microphone, his face turning red, but not a single word was audible over the hysteria of the crowd. "Shay's back. Oh my God, she is actually back," were the words that would eventually make the highlight reel. But in that moment, there was only the roar. Out from the smoke, skipping with that familiar, manic energy, came a Jay Lee, the woman who had birthed the revolution before it had a name. She wasn't wearing a suit. She wasn't there to talk. She was in her gear. She wore the iconic cut-up t-shirt, the combat boots, and the denim shorts. She looked exactly as she did the day she left, yet somehow more dangerous. Time hadn't touched her. It had only sharpened her. She paused at the top of the ramp, tilting her head to the side. Soaking in the adoration of a generation that thought they would never see this sight again. A distinct chant broke out, overtaking the music. CM Punk, CM Punk, followed quickly by AJ Lee. AJ Lee, she smirked, that famous twisted little smile that signaled chaos, and began her skip down the ramp. The camera tracked her movement, shaking slightly from the vibrations of the crowd's stomping feet. This wasn't just a return. It was a resurrection. As AJ Lee slid under the bottom rope, the dynamic in the arena shifted from celebration to confrontation. She stood up and locked eyes with Rhea Ripley. The visual contrast was stunning. Ripley, the towering, dark Gothic powerhouse, against AJ Lee, the smaller, agile, erratic firecracker. It was David versus Goliath, but David had a history of slaying giants. The music faded, but the crowd noise did not. They stood nose to chest. Ripley looked down at AJ, a sneer curling her lip. She towered over the returnee, using her size to intimidate. But AJ didn't flinch. She didn't back down. Instead, she skipped a circle around the champion, examining her like a predator examining a new, interesting species of prey. AJ picked up a microphone, her hand trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of the moment. She waited for the welcome back chants to die down, but they lasted for nearly 3 minutes. When silence finally fell, she spoke softly. She didn't scream. She whispered, "I heard you were looking for a challenge." The delivery was chilling. Ripley laughed, raising her belt high, mouthing the words, "Get out of my ring." It was the clash of two eras. The woman who started the change versus the woman who embodied the result of it. Ripley snatched the mic away, leaning in close. "You're a relic," Ripley spat, her Australian accent thick with disdain. "You're a memory, and memories fade. I am the nightmare that you can't wake up from." It was a great line, a line that would have ended anyone else. But AJ just smiled. The physical altercation was inevitable. Ripley, tired of the games, swung first a massive clothesline intended to take AJ's head off. But AJ was faster. She ducked under the limb with lightning speed, bouncing off the ropes. Ripley turned around, expecting to catch her, but AJ launched herself into the air, connecting with a Luthesh press. The crowd exploded again as the two women tumbled to the mat, trading fists. It was a chaotic scramble, a blur of hair and fists. Ripley used her raw power to shove AJ off, scrambling to her feet to deliver a big boot. AJ sidestepped, and Ripley got caught up in the turnbuckle. This was the moment. AJ waited for Ripley to stumble backward, disoriented. As the champion turned, AJ leaped, locking in the Black Widow submission hold. The visual was iconic. The unbreakable champion was suddenly tangled in the web of the returning legend. Ripley's eyes went wide with panic. She wasn't tapping. It wasn't a match, but the message was sent. She thrashed, trying to power out, but the hold was tight. Security rushed the ring, referees poured in from the back, desperately trying to separate them. AJ released the hold just before the wave of officials crashed into them, rolling out of the ring with a satisfied grin. She sat on the commentary table, crossing her legs, watching the chaos she had caused inside the ring. Ripley was furious, holding her arms, screaming threats, held back by 5 security guards. The segment ended with a lingering shot of AJ Lee sitting on the announcer's desk, swinging her feet, blowing a kiss to the furious champion in the ring. The copyright graphic appeared in the corner of the screen, but the cameras kept rolling. The commentary team was breathless, trying to summarize the magnitude of what had just occurred. The landscape of the division had changed in 15 minutes. The Invincible Champion was no longer safe. The ghost of the past had returned to haunt the present. Social media was already melting down, with the hashtag #SHESBack trending #1 worldwide within seconds. This wasn't just a cameo. The look in AJ's eyes promised war. Da-da-da-da-da, as the show faded to black. The final image was the Women's World Championship belt lying on the canvas, momentarily forgotten by Ripley in her rage, with AJ Lee staring directly at it. The story had just begun. The universe was stunned, the locker room was on notice, and the fans were left with the undeniable, electric realization that the road to WrestleMania had just become the most exciting journey in years. The Queen of the Black Widow web had returned to reclaim her throne. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you book the greatest return in WWE history. What do you think? Will AJ Lee be the one to finally dethrone Rhea Ripley, or will the nightmare crush the dream? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this fantasy booking, hit that like button, subscribe for more wrestling storytelling, and I'll see you in the next one.